Hey, folks, welcome to Affiliate Nerd Out. I am your nerderator, Dustin House, spreading that good word about affiliate marketing. And my guest today is Dave Zarin, CEO of Zarinology. Welcome to the Nerdatorium again, Dave.
Hey, Dustin. Yep, I'm a double dipper. Or was that the right term?
It sounds good to
Yeah.
me. I enjoy it. Yes, you're in the two-timer club. Thanks for again for
Two
coming
timer.
on and giving us your knowledge. Our topic of the day is going to be S2S tracking, postback tracking, cookie list tracking, all the tracking, things that are confusing to the general public in the affiliate marketing world. And we're going to shine some light on them because I just don't find enough information on the internet to highlight what's going on as an affiliate manager. So,
Yeah, I get you. Yep.
yeah, thanks for being here, bud. This is pre-recorded, so we won't be having any live discussions in the chat today. But without further ado, here, Dave, who are you?
Well, I'm Dave. I am the CEO. Kind of call myself the CXO because I do wear a lot of hats within my company of Zarinology. We are uh, primarily a development company, but we also do consultatory work with e-commerce brands, mid-range e-commerce brands that are really at the point where they have, got their product market fit. And they're starting to see some growth, but they're ready to scale and they're running into pitfalls and issues and challenges that they just can't seem to overcome internally. So we work with a lot of companies like that and help them kind of take that next step with our expertise, in the e-commerce world. And that's a full funnel experience. So everything from where your where your traffic's coming from, all the way to making sure that we're optimizing, conversions, optimizing logistics behind the scene to make sure that everything is flowing correctly, system integrations, as well as customer experience, customer loyalty.
Great, and that's such a needed service out here in this industry. There's once you grow an affiliate program to a certain level, I think there's every bit of opportunity to scale with some added technology, bells and whistles, the things that are going to make your decision making a lot sharper, and that's what I would assume people come to you for, right?
Typically, yes. Yeah. So it's whether it's you're trying to understand how a specific software works, or how two of them can communicate with each other, that are already, out of the box services, that typically, it brings in, some kind of middleware bridge that we have to do in between, whether that's another SaaS service like a Zapier, or if we need something a little more intelligent that can react to
Mhm.
more various case scenarios. So yeah, but it's very there's a lot of different ways that you can work with us, whether it's solving like one small problem or if it's a holistic view at your entire process that you have, from a technical standpoint, a marketing standpoint, financial standpoint, an operations standpoint. We kind of look at all those things and consider them holistically on some of our larger projects to make sure that there's no pitfalls or holes on one that's causing friction
Mhm.
on the other.
Oh, that's great. And then our topic of the day here is going to be mastering S2S tracking and postback tracking. I think for me, I've spent 13 plus years in the affiliate industry, and I've never really gotten an excellent grasp on the capabilities of tracking throughout a platform and setting up programs right and helping affiliates succeed. So, um, and when I go out and try to learn more about it on the internet, I fall short. I would love to have some more documented processes, and that's why I came to you because you're the smartest guy I know in this field, and so glad you could spend some time with us today. So we're going to start off simple and go to what is cookie tracking, and in your opinion, is cookie tracking dying?
Sure. So what a cookie is, for people, I think most people have a general understanding of what it is,
Sure.
but what it does is it allows for persistent information to be shared across uh, web pages on the same domain. So just as an example, Facebook, when you go to Facebook and you land on the login and you put in your credentials and you log in, it's going to validate and authenticate. Then it's going to send back information for a session for you being logged in, and that's going to get stored in a cookie. So that way, when they redirect you to the next page, which is where you see your timeline and all the other stuff and all the cool stuff you get to do on there, they know that this is a valid login on that browser. Because when you're on page A, login page, and then you go to page B, which is the page that you're seeing as you are logged in, those two pages can't communicate with each other. So on page A, there's one set of information. Then an action is performed. You go to the second page. The second page has no idea that the other page really ever existed. It doesn't know anything about it. The only way they share information is through cookies. I mean, there's other ways to do it. Also,
Mhm.
there's other types of storage in the browser, like local storage and session storage. But when it comes to cookies, that's the traditional way. The reason they always use cookies is because you can expire cookies. It's very easy. It's built in to cookies. You could say, I want this to last for the session. So if they close their browser and quit, and then they come back in, then that cookie no longer exists. So that means they'd have to log back in and re-authenticate. But then you can have persistency in those. You ever notice, like when you go to log in, it says like, remember me for 30 days. Well, what they do is they set a 30-day cookie, because that cookie will know that, and that's a very simplistic way. I mean, there's obviously more advanced ways that we can do this, but they ultimately have to have some kind of browser, some kind of data in the browser that stays persistent from page to page, so they know that you exist. So that is the reason that cookies really exist in the first place. Then they started getting using for tracking, which came in the fashion of third-party cookies. Now,
Okay.
third-party cookies are the ones that nobody likes, because those are the ones that, and all right, so if you've been using Everflow or Tune or any of these affiliate trackers that are very popular out there, Impact, any of those, what you notice is every time you go to create an offer in one of those systems, they're going to give you a tracking link, right? And that tracking link isn't going to look like your website. I mean, it could be created that way, but let's just say out of the box, it's not going to look like yours, because it's their domain. So what's happening is that once you send that tracking link out to people in an email, what they're clicking on is a domain that is managed by that tracking system, that software. So what happens is when they land on the page, they then the system's going to collect all this information about them, device, IP, all those things. Then it's going to redirect them out to your actual offer. So the way third-party cookies would work is, originally when you got to that first page, they would drop a cookie on whatever that domain was. So tracking, we'll call it tracking.com. We'll just make it easy. So on
Right.
tracking.com, we just dropped a cookie on tracking.com. Then we sent you to next domain, or mycoolproduct.com. So now you're on mycoolproduct.com. There's no cookie on mycoolproduct.com but there is one on tracking.com. So by utilizing something like an iframe, for example, when somebody would go through and they purchase on myproduct.com, they land on the final thank you page. We know they purchased. We slap an iframe on there, and what's happening is that iframe is loading tracking.com and ultimately loading that third party cookie, so that they can identify that original click that came through. So that's how that attribution was going to work. So obviously, it's 2024, probably about 4 years ago. Longer than that, they've been like, they threw up the red flags on third party cookies, because things like, like obviously with Facebook, if you had Facebook, if you're logged in, your cookies are on facebook.com.
Hmm.
But but if somebody put a script on their page for Facebook, like a pixel script on there, then Facebook could communicate back with facebook.com and find out information about you while you're on a completely different website. That's what
Oh,
third-party cookies enabled. So people didn't like that. It's a privacy issue, no
sure.
problem. So we start, seeing all these, there's legislation, there's all kinds of different stuff and new rules that come out and compliances that you have to follow. You also have to give consent. California was a big one, and the EU are also big on that, is making sure that people have the opportunity to give consent on whether or not they're going to be tracked when they land on that page. And there's so many implementations I've seen of that.
Yeah.
Not all of them are correct. So, but ultimately, cookies are something that we need. So it's probably not going to ever die. And if it ever did die, then they're just going to go to the local storage. They're going to have to store information, because for a lot of times you'll notice on those like cookie banner things where they're like, I accept all or customize. So you click on customize and they give you this list of like, functional cookies and, tracking cookies and, all kinds of different stuff. So obviously functional cookies you need, because if you can't function, there's a lot of features you won't be able to enjoy on certain websites without those cookies. But you do have the ability to now say, I don't want to be tracked. I don't want, all
Yeah.
that other stuff in there.
Good luck.
So yeah, exactly. So it's like
There's
now the big thing, yeah. Now the big thing is first party cookies. So what first party cookie is versus a third party is that cookie is actually on myproduct.com. So
hmm,
now we're talking first party, and first party cookies will probably never die. I mean, I
okay.
can't imagine them ever going away, and it still kind of puts you as the person who owns that domain and owns that content. You are responsible for ensuring that you are meeting compliances on how those cookies are set and whether or not people can be tracked with said cookies. But there's a lot less security implications because there isn't a domain, a third party actor in the background that other people don't know about. And that's what was happening with third party cookies. And that's ultimately what started this whole I hate cookies rampage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it can be super frustrating. Go to a website and giant pop-up comes up and it forces you to allow it, or you can't X out of it, or you can't
Mhm.
adjust what you want their site to. It can be frustrating, but I understand why they're doing it and how they're working towards the compliance of that. Um, that's a great representation of what cookies are. Talk about why cookieless tracking is trending so hot right now in our industry.
Gotcha, sure. So obviously it's because, well, I mean, for like reasons I just talked about, it's kind of, it has become, I don't know what a good term for it is, but it's become a faux pas almost to make it, yeah, everyone's like, oh, you use cookies, like,
Mm,
so, you know, it, it's kind of a new way of making people feel more secure about interacting with with your offers and with your technology and what you're doing. That's really the only benefit I can imagine coming from
mm,
doing cookieless tracking, is really just kind of the, building that framework of, okay, so we care about your privacy.
mm,
We are not going to, ultimately you can, without cookies, you can do a lot of tracking. It's just hard to keep persistence. So across everything that they touch. And I can kind of dive into that a little bit more as well. So if you think about cookieless tracking, the first thing that comes into mind is, last in, first in. Obviously, it's always going to be last in if you're not using cookies, because say, affiliate A sends person to, I'll give you a first in cookie
okay.
or a first in tracking example to kind of paint that. So you have affiliate A sends person to offer. This is a first in offer, which means that we're storing in a cookie the transaction ID that was created, or sorry, it's really a click ID. Might be a better way to say it. Click ID from your tracking system that hits on the page. We store that information. Now that that is stored in a cookie, if affiliate B sends somebody, the same exact person, to your offer, then we're going to look at that page and say, hey, cookie's already set. We have an expiration of 60 days. We haven't eclipsed 60 days, which means affiliate A still is the person who's going to get attributed for the sale. That's what first in really is. So you have a time period. The first person in, they win. So
Okay.
affiliate B, heck, affiliate C could send them there and they could buy, but affiliate A is still getting the credit in
Great.
first in. Now with last in, obviously, even in the same concept, if you are storing it in a cookie, you would overwrite that cookie every time something new came in because
Mm,
you're just taking the last in. And then same thing with cookieless tracking. Obviously, those tracking IDs are going to be sent in the URL as a URL parameter. So what that means is that whenever you see a URL, this is what restream.io, anything if there's a question mark after the .io or the .com or any of those things, that's basically saying that's the beginning of a query string. These are questions I want to answer when I send this request.
mhm.
And then you could say you put insert key value from here. So in the case of the tracking parameters coming over to your page, they're going to have something like a click ID, transaction ID, however they want to name that. So like Everflow click ID equals, and then that transaction ID is going to be in there, the click ID. Then we grab that information, we store it. Now, if we weren't using cookies, we just wouldn't store it in a cookie. We would store it in a session file, or we would associate it with what you're doing right then. And then at that point in time, we would have to utilize probably some other form of technology like JavaScript. We're either going to pass that into the URL and pass it from page to page to page in the URL, because then we don't need a cookie to store it. We're passing it in the URL. Or we're going to utilize like React or some other kind of JavaScript application technology, so that you're basically serving them a one-page application that will step through various steps without giving them the illusion that they're moving pages, but they're never really actually moving. So you still have all that same information that you stored, in the state of that application when it first loaded.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would utilize that to do your tracking.
Good.
So I'd say, why is it trending? I got a little technical on you there,
Sure did.
but yeah. But why is it trending? I think it's really just an automatic trust with your audience. It breaches a barrier very quickly.
Gotcha. Good call. All right. And moving on to S2S tracking. What is it and why do we need it?
Okay, sure. So, um, I racked my brain on a few analogies for this. So, for every time you load a web page, there's really two sides that are involved. There's a client side, which is your browser, and then there's a server side, which is the server receiving the request and then delivering the content based on what that request was to the client side. And then it's the client side, the browser's job to make that look the way it's going to look.
Okay.
So basically, like HTML, I'm sure everyone's heard HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Those are,
Sure.
everyone, whether you're techie
Okay.
or not, you've probably heard those terms before. So HTML is a markup language, CSS is a styles that gets read by the browser. So the server is just saying, server can't show you a web page, like it can't make you see one visually. That's the responsibility of the browser. So it's
Okay.
going to deliver that code, that markup, and then the browser has to interpret how that's going to look. And that's going to be based on how that browser was, who built that browser. So obviously you have, Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Edge. You have all these various browsers, and for a long time, they're a lot more similar now than they used to be. But for a long time, they used to be very disparate, and you'd have to build a page like 3 different ways to service 5 different browsers, because they were so different in the way they rendered that content. So what server-side tracking is, so most tracking traditionally in the beginning, especially with third-party cookies, was done on the client side. That was like an iframe or image pixel that you would use and plot that onto a page. And whenever somebody reached that destination page, it would just fire because it would load in the browser. So that's what a client-side version of tracking is. Now that's it's a little bit more difficult to manage, because unless you one problem would be, if they reloaded the page a few times, it's going to fire that pixel every single time. So there's a lot of ways that you can stop that from creating duplicate transactions through most applications. But back in 2014, that wasn't the case. That was just something we actually had to deal with, was making sure that we weren't getting multiple conversions. So what server to server tracking really gives you is, or what it means is, that you're actually firing all that stuff on the server side rather than on the client side, which basically is adding a layer of intelligence.
Great.
It allows you to have conditions that can be met. It allows you to have a little more flexibility on how you fire it and what data you're going to send to it. Now the client side is still involved, because you need the client side to collect tracking IDs, make sure that the order actually gets processed, or that information gets sent over and then sent back, to where it's being processed. And then you need to notify the server side that something happened, and then make sure that it has access to whatever information it needs to have. There's so many different ways that you could approach this, but I'll just say from this side, you're basically, the client side does need to tell the server side that it is eligible to, or triggered to send a conversion. But then intelligence can kick in. We could say we're passing an order ID, but we're not passing any order information. But then that server could then say, go and connect with your order management system, pull down the details from that order, get the subtotal, the email address, any other information that you might need to the order. Well, you're already getting the order ID, but any of that additional information you want to send, and then it can package that into the conversion fire, and then it can send it. But then also it can make sure that there's a response back from that conversion
Okay.
fire. So that means that it knows it fired. So that means that if you don't get a response from the server side, depending on which system you're working on, working with, if it doesn't get a response, you can assume that maybe that didn't fire. So now you can actually, from the server side, you could set up an alert. You could set up, fields in a database that would say, hey, we're not sure if this actually fired or not. And that gives transparency for you as an advertiser or a network to go in and say, okay, it looks like we've been converting at 6% on this offer, and all of a sudden yesterday it started converting at 3% with the same traffic. Why? How do you answer that question if you have no visibility or transparency on how that data is flowing? You can't. So if everything's happening on the client side, then you're just hoping for the best. So when
Mhm.
you introduce the server side, now you've got database, you've got ways of kind of storing a lot of like this information, not necessarily the PII, but information about what's going on, and say, okay, now I can look back and say, oh, okay, so it looks like for some reason these weren't firing, even though they were sent to the proper domain. Well, maybe there was an outage at the affiliate software that you were using. Maybe there was a quick outage for like an
Yeah.
hour or something, and it dropped, and it didn't receive any of those conversions. We're like, well, I've got them all here. So all I got to do is go back and run a process, and we'll go and update all those. And now I've got all the data that I didn't think I had, and then I
Wow.
can get a better measure of how everything's working. So those are kind of some of the benefits of using server side tracking. It just gives you a lot more control, a lot more transparency and visibility, and a lot more flexibility. And also, I mean, some people are working with 2 or 3 different affiliate trackers. I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
it before. So like if you're leveraging multiple systems, server side is a must, because
Sure.
it basically becomes a bridge. It's just kind of the term I typically use, is bridge, that you can say, all right, so these two things there's a big gap right in between them. So if we build a bridge in between, that kind of dictates where this information goes and how it gets there, and then also ensures that it gets there. And if it doesn't, can at least let us know so we can figure out why and then fix that. I mean, that's very beneficial to anybody's business, especially when, your relationships with affiliates is so important, and data transparency is a big part of that trust.
Absolutely. A great fail safe in case tracking actually does go down for you. And then on top of that, like the transparency you talk with your affiliate partners, you're not going to find good partners that are going to sign up for a program that is not doing S2S tracking. So it is an important aspect to them. And another important aspect that we want to talk about as well here is postback tracking. What is it, and why do partners need it?
Sure. So this is another form of server side tracking that you probably wouldn't do on your own. You would let your affiliate tracker assist you with this. So because you want as little responsibility on your end, even in your bridge, as far as how to identify that click that came through for that conversion. So you really want to just rely on that transaction ID or click ID. They all use different nomenclatures for that. For that
Mm.
click ID, you want that to be your central point. You want the system that you're paying for, whether whichever system it is, they're all going to work in a similar fashion. You want that to have the responsibility of attributing that back to the original click. Um, which is what those click IDs do. So somebody comes in and you say, okay, they came from this IP address, they have this device, they have this and that, and they came from this region. Then they come and they purchase. Then that sends that transaction ID, and then we associate it with that click again. That's what your affiliate tracking system is going to be doing. And then you could say, all right, so that person in particular, or that user, is this person here that created this conversion in this order. So with a postback, what happens is when we send that transaction ID back to your system with to your original affiliate tracker with the how much the amount that was done and any other information we want, A postback is going to be something that you are provided by an affiliate, for example. And what that postback is going to do is fire back information to their tracking system to update them that a conversion happened.
Okay.
So the way that this would work, and I'll just kind of explain a scenario from top to bottom. I'm an affiliate, you're an advertiser. You have an offer that I want to push. So I say, okay, give me your offer tracking link from your tracking system. Okay. Give me that link. So you hand me that tracking link. Now I'm not going into my system as the affiliate. I'm not going into my system and I'm not putting your page URL in there because that's your base destination URL. That's your final link, right? That's the resolved link. We don't want that. We want your tracking ID. So I'm going to put that tracking ID into my offer in my system. Now that I have that, I am going to also say from my tracking system, I want to send my click ID from my tracking system when somebody clicks on my tracking link. I want to send that to your tracking link as which we're about to probably get into sub IDs, but I'm going to send it as a
Mhm.
sub ID, right? So we'll call it like sub ID 5. I'm going to send it in as there. Now what happens is then I'm going to just send out my tracking links, right? So somebody's going to come and click on that link. It's going to go to my affiliate tracker. They're going to create that tracking and a click ID. Then what's going to happen is they're going to send them to the next URL, which is your tracking system as the advertiser. And when it sends to that, it's going to take the click ID that it created within my tracking system and send it to your system as sub ID 5. Then when it hits your system is going to say, okay, let me store all this information, sub ID that just came through, sub ID 5. And then it's going to send them to the actual page, which is the resolve link, the final destination where they're going. All right. So now that this has happened, your as the advertiser, your Everflow, Tune, whatever affiliate tracker you're using,
Mhm.
yours has that that click ID stored as sub ID 5. So when it issues its tracking ID and sends it to your page, and then that comes through, and then somebody buys, and then we fire a conversion back to your system saying, hey, this tracking ID just fired. So then it's going to look and say, okay, great. Now we're going to log this conversion here. And then I'm going to look and see, hey, does anyone have any postbacks? Yeah, this person has a postback. Okay. So when I set up that postback in here, I'm going to say, hey, just take whatever is an affiliate sub 5 and send that as their click ID in that postback. Okay, great. Affiliate, sub ID 5. There's the value. We append it to it. We fire it back to them. Now their system can track back to its original click by using that tracking ID, that conversion. And that's how that's kind of like the path in which postbacks follow and how they actually work. So it really gives in more real time the affiliate partner the ability to get visibility on the performance of their offers or traffic on your offer by staying in their own tracking system rather than having to log into yours and maybe 15 other people that they're working with.
For sure. And affiliates will want that post back tracking, the ones that are doing a lot of volume and sending offers
Mm.
to a lot of uh, brands and traffic. And one of those things that good affiliates are going to be asking for. And if you're not on the right platform, you might not be able to have that capability. And that's why I want to thank our sponsor of the day, somebody that does handle that. That is Inflection, the only platform with personalized funnels to scale partnership marketing for brands, agencies, influencers, and affiliates alike. Catering to the health and wellness space, this tracking solution is helping build landing pages for partners in a matter of minutes instead of weeks. I'm personally recruiting partners for this brand that we are working with. So if you are a brand or an agency, come check out a demo of Inflection. And if you're an affiliate, come talk to me and join the programs on our platform. Go to dustinhouse.com/inflection to learn more. And getting back into it, we talked about sub IDs a little bit. This has always confused me. What are sub IDs and why are there 5 of them a lot of the times in the platforms?
Sure, that's fair. Sub IDs are just a useful mechanism to pass data.
Mm,
That's like a high level overview. So most
right?
people know what UTM parameters are, especially dealing with social media marketing and Google Analytics. UTM parameters are exactly the same thing. It's just that they're well defined. UTM content instead of sub one, sub two, sub three. So, when you look at something like sub one, sub two, sub three, sub four, sub five, like those could be translated in any way. So you could be like, you could have one person or one group that says, okay, sub ID one is the date of the send, or, and sub ID two is the headline, and sub ID three is the link. And then you could have another group that tracks the same things, but they do them in different sub ID numbering. So it's just there's just no like I guess a SOP out there that says you have to use them for this. It's just a wild, wild west. Yeah. So ultimately, the purpose of sub IDs is to pass additional information along with either. Now, there's two types of sub IDs as well. There are affiliate sub IDs and there are advertiser sub IDs.
Okay.
So an affiliate sub ID is valid on a click action. So when somebody makes a click and you're tracking, the source of that information. An advertiser sub ID is something you would use at the conversion level. So somebody purchased. So there's some systems that have built-in things like order ID, email address, and amount. Obviously, all of them have amount because it's a kind of a staple into how it actually works. But you could also manipulate the payout through the conversion pixel. So like if you're not actually loading those offers, or if you have a lot of variables that make a difference in who gets paid what. Now, obviously, there are plenty of systems that you can go in and you could say, hey, at the offer level, it's I'm going to give a $10 payout. And I'm just pulling numbers out. I'm going to give a $10 payout on anyone who buys, but then I have like 5 affiliates that are only going to get $7. You can go into each affiliate and you can actually change that at the application level. But sometimes there's a lot more logic behind something like that, where you're saying, oh, okay, is this when it comes to like I'll give an example of like a CPL type offer where you're just getting registrations and you're paying out like $1 or $2.
Okay.
Like, is this a duplicate registration? Did I send somebody to this offer from affiliate A and then affiliate B sent the same person? Am I going to pay them $2 twice? Or am I going to pay maybe 50 cents or $1 for that second one because it was a duplicate on that same offer, or that same landing page for that same information? So for something like that, that's going to require a little bit more logic on the server side, which is why you would use server side tracking. And we've actually built stuff like that before. That's why I come up with this analogy. But yeah, we've
Yeah.
built very robust tracking, behind the scenes, to communicate. So when it comes to sub IDs, though, like as an advertiser, if they don't have something built in for you to pass that data to the tracking system, but something that you want to know when you look at your reports, your conversion reports, your offer reports, you can then pass that in as an advertiser sub ID. So it could be anything. It could be some kind of unique identifier from another system. It could be like if you have if you're using an email responder system and you're sending those people in to the email responder system, and then you're waiting for that to respond back and say, yes, they're in here. Here's our contact ID, and you want to pass that into your opt-in conversion, you can send that as advertiser sub ID one, and then you've got that ID in there. So if there was ever, any reason that you needed to correlate that information, you'd have it in your tracker. So all kinds of different use cases that we've run into for those. But ultimately, it is just additional information. So if you're using an email and you're doing a drop as an affiliate, and you want to know this click came from this drop, which will
Mhm.
name the campaign. So sub ID 1 is the campaign, sub ID 2 is the date it dropped, sub ID 3 is the subject line, sub ID 4 is which link out of the 4 that are in this email did they click, because then it gives you the ability to then open up those sub IDs and say, okay, so 50% of the conversions we got came from link number 3. So now you have a little bit better idea of where more people are clicking, and then it gives you a little bit more, insights into potential of optimizing. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that, but potentially optimizing, what that content is and what you're doing, what you're saying there that leads them to click at that point rather than any of the others, or to convert when they click there
Yeah.
rather than converting at any of the others.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you're planning for the future when you're using sub IDs. You're figuring out uh, what exactly is working so that you can replicate it again in the future. So good practice to have on both ends of the party. And then lastly, like you mentioned UTM parameters. How do you set them up for a partner? What's the best practice here?
Sure. So when it comes to a UTM parameter, basically it's probably more of a mapping that you're going to need to work with them on than anything. Because usually, if they have UTM's, like say on like a Facebook ad or any kind of social media ad or even like a Google ad, and they're gonna use UTM parameters just as an example. And if they want to use those same parameters, they're just really going to have to map them to your sub IDs because there's really no way. I mean, some trackers might have something built in for that. Like if you send them as UTM parameters, they'll collect them. But most of the ones I've seen, even if they did collect them, they don't make them readily visible to you. You almost have to pull the data from an API to really get it and use it. And that's pretty much a showstopper right there. So
Hmm.
it's really more about mapping those out, saying, okay, so UTM source is sub ID one, UTM medium is sub ID two, because the sub ID nomenclature, or sorry, parameters really is what it is, that they're going to use aren't going to change. Like the system is going to create them, and those are the ones they're going to use. So it's really more of an understanding of the fact that a sub ID and a UTM parameter are really essentially the same thing, just with a different name on
Okay.
it. So it's kind of like when we had what was that? Not Bluetooth. It's the HD video and Blu-ray. They were the same thing, just two different companies came out with it, and one of them ended up winning. So UTM's are very well known in the industry.
Sure.
Everybody knows what a UTM parameter is, but really it's essentially exactly the same thing. They're just tracking parameters that allow for more visibility and transparency of data flow, so you can have better ability to attribute.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for all these explanations here, Dave. It is time for you to defend your post, sir. So
Oh
this is
boy,
where
it's been a minute since I posted too. So
it has, but I found
yeah.
something fun. Being that
Oh yes.
Despicable Me is coming out, Despicable Me 4. I thought your resemblance of Groot with a wig on was pretty spot on here, and I just wanted to
Great.
highlight, and I want to know what this Get You Fit episodes is all about.
So I started this thing like I was, as a technical person with a lot of knowledge, it does tend to be hard to figure out how to relate, stories and information to people. So I I had this idea of just like, putting on, I had a few wigs I got, and then like I was using like filters on, what was that? Like me, Snapchat filters.
All right.
And I'm like filming these little segments. So I'm basically playing every character in this dynamic of, like the first episode was just kind of like, the COO person was kind of talking to the marketing guy, and he's like, oh yeah, well the tracking's broken, so we don't really know how well this new ad's been performing. And she's like, well, Larry, who is the owner of the company, is like, oh, I hear that. So it's like, do you know what's going on? And they're just kind of talking about it, setting the thing for it. And then the second episode, they're all about a minute, maybe a little longer. The second episode is when Larry comes in and they meet, like the audience meets him, and he's talking about like how's everything going, and they're like, yeah, it's broken, and they're like, how well is the tech team working on? And he's like, yeah, they said it's going to be a few days, or a week
Sure.
or something, and he's like, a week. So he's freaking out, like we need this working, and we're spending all this money, and blah blah blah. And the typical stuff you see. It's just kind of a day in the life. And then it goes to episode 3, where they kind of bring in Miles, the tech guy, and then he starts talking about it, and like what he has to do, what it's like from the technical side to deal with that. And then like I think I got the first 3 or 4 of them done, and then I went on a big trip last year for like 20 something days, and like I took a break from it, and then I came back. Like I wasn't getting a ton of engagement. And I was like, I have to decide where I want to spend a lot of my time. And
Yeah.
since it wasn't really getting a ton of engagement, I kind of backed off a little bit. But I had 8 episodes written out. I just haven't filmed all of them. So if somebody watching this wants to like go and start getting people to watch it, I'll consider it. But but they are somewhat entertaining.
Oh, great. I love the humor behind it, and the turmoils you go through as a business owner, and what you're facing is it's all the same in any service industry. Like, these are
Sure.
the battles. I love what you're doing there. Keep on creating, buddy.
Thanks.
All right. Really enjoyed our topic of the day, and really appreciate you coming in and explaining this in layman's terms of what all these things were. If somebody wants to work with you, how do they get a hold of you here?
Well, Xeronology.com, that's a great place to start. We also have a new product that we're launching at the end of this month called Ecom Evolved. And that's more of a consultatory and advisory style service with the opportunity to work with me as a growth partner. Which what that looks like is, myself and my team kind of come in and we help you look at your business from a very holistic standpoint, and we help optimize the things that are preventing you from scaling and reaching the next level that you're trying to reach. And most of our target audience for that's really like mid-sized, mid-level people, kind of like what I talked about at the beginning. Mid-size, direct-to-consumer brands, that are selling online, through storefront or sales funnels, and they're selling digital or physical products, subscription based or transactional based. So if you're, kind of fitting there and you're finding it tough to, you can't move the needle on your ARR and
Yeah.
you're trying to figure out why. And obviously there's going to be pitfalls within every organization, whether it's, disparate systems or, not enough bandwidth because of too many manual processes. We come in and we help with that, everything from the, full funnel, from the top of the funnel to the bottom, whether it's optimizing conversions, split testing, ensuring that fulfillment and all of those other things are connected, whether you're dealing with fraud or, other like merchant account issues. So we help, from that entire process.
Fantastic. I'll keep on sending people your way that has those technical issues. And thanks for joining me again, Dave. Appreciate your time. And for all those folks out there listening, keep on recruiting, and we'll see you out